Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and this week we're welcoming back in our friend Ajit from India. He's going to talk to us about Hinduism and also mystical Hinduism, two things that I know very little about. So before we get started, I just want to say, hey Ajit, how are you? Good evening. I guess it's nighttime where you are, and thanks for coming back in.
And good morning to you, and good day to everybody who's going to be listening to this podcast. It's wonderful to be back again, and see you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you for that. For those who don't know Ajit, he was our guest on a prior show on the Vedas and the Vedic history. So check out that show. It's a very popular episode, and I think you'll enjoy it. I do want to follow up on something from a show a few weeks ago that with Professor Michael York. I asked him a couple questions about the country where he resides, and he wasn't really sure about the answer, but he looked it up and followed up with me, so I'm going to put it out there into the ether so that we know. So we were talking about the origin of the country Holland, because there is no tribe, the Holes or the Halls, and literally in Old English, Holland means woodland. So that was the origins. We also talked about Juteland, which is now Denmark, and we were wondering if that was because of a tribe called the Jutes or because it jumped out, or both. And in fact, it is a tribe called the Jutes. But as far as the Jut or Jute out, he wasn't sure, so he looked into it. And it may be one of those strange coincidences in land, but or in history. But Jut is the deduced form of jet in the 1400s, like a jetty, which is sort of like a natural dock. So it juts out into the water. It's derived from the French jeter, meaning to throw. Jutland is the land of the Jutes and has a separate Germanic origin. And there's some other pieces on it, but it is a coincidence that it does in fact jut out and was the land of the Jutes. But as we found out on another recent episode of Garden of Doom, Hungary, it turns out, is not named after the Huns, even though it was one of their westernmost encampments and capitals, if you call a capital for a basically nomadic steppe people. So there are these strange coincidences in history. That out of the way, we're going to move back over east, someplace where the Huns did cross probably for a long time. And we're going back to India. So that diversion aside, we're back on track. And Ajit, I leave it in your able hands.
Lovely. So yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of this, and to be able to share little nuggets from whatever I've learned in my lifetime. Again, the same disclaimer that I had in the previous show with Jeff. I am neither a scholar nor a proponent of Hinduism philosophy or its tenets. I am a keen observer, a keen seeker, and I wish that all the knowledge that I hope to dissipate in this conversation would be considered in that perspective. Over to you, Jeff.
Absolutely. No, I think the term that people use here in the West for this is independent researcher. So yeah.
All right.
It sounds very formal, but yeah, no, well, fair enough. We got that disclaimer, and you gave the same disclaimer last episode, and you seem like a pretty big authority on it afterwards. You knew chapter and verse. So yeah, let's see what you got anyway. This is a 101 to 201 type of show anyway. Sometimes we obviously dive deeper because the experts and guests are often deeper, but that is not required. This is a primer or primer. I'm never sure how to pronounce that word, so that the person who has no knowledge of this or just some basic interest or curiosity can grasp it. So with your disclaimer embraced, I fully trust you to dazzle us.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So I guess, Hinduism, huh? So one of the things about Hinduism, one of the strange things that I learned is I thought that Buddhism and Hinduism, like I often got them confused, especially when I learned that Siddhartha was Indian and Buddhism started in India, but it sort of got more popular over time and moved further east into, China is probably the most famous Buddhist country, the largest anyway. And then came Hinduism, and I've listened to podcasts and read some books and whatever, and they seem to be fairly similar. Professor York referred to them as dharmic religions. I didn't follow up with him on what that meant because the show had so much other content and that wasn't really the topic, and I knew that I was talking to you, so I don't know, maybe start with, if you know what's a dharmic religion.
Sure. So just to get started, Hinduism is a way of life. It's never considered a religion by the Western definition of it, right? In fact, the Supreme Court of India also has ruled that in a 1995 judgment that Hinduism is a way of life and should not be kind of bracketed as a religion, right? Basically, the connotation that Professor York would have used is dharmic religion, just for a Western audience that is used to looking at everything from a religion perspective, right? There are these Abrahamic religions, and therefore the other religions that we are not familiar with, let us kind of define those religions in the way that we are comfortable with. That's what the West did during the colonial era and all that, right? So dharmic actually is a Sanskrit word. Dharmic means anything to do with dharma, right? And dharma is basically the tenets or the rules or the ways of life, right? So we Indians, we believe that Hindu is a dharma. Hindu is not a religion, right? Because, there is a subtle difference between religion and dharma. Dharma is tenets, a way of life, the rules of living, civilization, as they say, right? And religion is more like what is preached to you. There is a single person up there who's looking upon you, and you got to go by the gospel or whatever the holy books teach you, right? It's a one-way path towards realization of God. Hinduism is a multifold path towards realization of the Supreme.
Okay.
That is the basic difference between dharma and religion. And just on the note of Buddhism that you spoke about, so Siddhartha was a Hindu, and Hinduism is the oldest known way of life, a civilizational edict or religion, whatever you want to call it, right? And we call it the Sanatana Dharma, Sanatana. Sanatana in Sanskrit means endless, it's infinite. So there's no beginning, no end. And therefore, we don't know the origins of this particular way of life, right? We can quote from the Vedas and the original scriptures and stuff, but even they say that this is timeless. So, right? So that it goes to a pre-cosmic or, a pre-civilizational time, if I may, right? I mean, Australians call it the dream time. I think this is somewhere beyond that, right?
Okay.
So with Buddhism, Siddhartha had some issues with the way the Hindu way of life was being dealt with at that point in time. He was a prince, he was a royal, right? He gave up all the royalty of the Hindu kingdom and, went about his own mission of realizing the nirvana or the enlightenment, right? And in Buddhism, dharma is kind of transformed into another word called dhamma, Dhamma, right? So there's a subtle difference. And that's basically one of the reasons why I think Buddhism spread beyond India, because the civilizations beyond India didn't have this kind of a storytelling or a cultural perspective, right? So I think that's the reason it's spread far and wide. Of course, Indian kings and loyalty, like King Ashoka, they helped the propagation of that particular religion, So, and by the way, Buddhism is called a religion, but in the Indian constitution, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, they are all part of the Hinduism way of life. They are considered as one, right?
Do Buddhists consider themselves part of that? And do Buddhists consider Buddhism a religion or more of a philosophy?
So there are two kinds of Buddhists. One of them is called the Hinayana sect, and the other one is the Mahayana sect, right? And both of them have different beliefs in their origins, right? The former, if I'm not wrong, the Hinayana sect believe that they are descendant of, Hindus. I mean, they kind of came from there. And the Mahayana Buddhists, they say that we are vastly different from what Hinduism preaches or practices, and therefore we should consider ourselves as a different entity. So, these debates are endless, and to a large extent, when we are talking about philosophy and society, I think these are futile in terms of what it means to individuals. It's a practice that has been going on for thousands of years, and it's a marvel that we all continue to exist in the multitude of this particular society.
Well, it sounds like in both cases, and probably more the other, branches of both tenets. We're just trying to put a Western label on it when we call it religion, because it doesn't sound like a lot of the Eastern philosophies that we call religions are really exactly religions. I mean, as you made clear in the Vedic show, that's not religion, that's history. You consider history. And I and just recently on two cases, I heard somebody talk about that there, seemingly was a nuclear war 8,000 years ago or 8,000 BC in Rajasthan, I think that was the name.
Yeah, Haryana, Kurukshetra was the name.
And you mentioned that on the show as well. In Buddhism, I haven't had a show formally on Buddhism, but I have had on Chinese mythology and magic, and which are one and the same, and it's the same thing. Those are still the religion. That's still the God. Philosophy and religion is often hard to separate anyhow. But the Buddhism is almost supplemental. It doesn't replace the Jade Emperor, so to speak. So anyway, it's interesting you point that out, and it's I say it out loud because I figure most of my audience is Western, though India is in the top 5 or 6 countries of listeners. But most of the audience is Western, and maybe if I struggle through it and try to separate the two and make that leap. It'll be easier for others to do the same as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's time that there is a narrative that is showcased that is more acceptable and tenable to the West, so that a lot of these myths and misconceptions get dissolved once and for all, and we look forward to having a more unified and a more inclusive and diverse kind of narratives for the world to consume.
Okay, so I guess let's start with Hinduism 101. I'm sure Hinduism, like every other great belief system, has multiple branches. But to keep it simple, maybe we should just stick with the most popular, most prevalent, or agreed upon common principles. And then whenever you're ready, just let us know, and you can turn us off into the off-ramp or on-ramp onto the more mystical aspects.
Sure. So, yeah, as you said, there are multiple threads here. As I said, Hinduism always believes in multiple ways towards reaching the Supreme or realizing the Supreme, right? I don't use the word God because that has a very, a Western connotation is different from the East. So, for example, Hinduism, we have a pantheon of 33 million gods.
It's a lot of gods.
Lots. So, in India, every family has their own deity that they worship, and they, of course, worship other deities as well. But it's a unique facet that we are able to have these multiple ways of looking at the Supreme and addressing multiple facets of the Supreme through a human iconographic deities, right? What they call as worshipping.
Can I ask you a couple questions, actually? Does the 33 million number ever change, or because it's cyclical, even if that particular god dies in their timeline or whatever, do they get reincarnated so that the population stays steady at 33 million?
So that's a cool one. That's a good one, actually. There are two aspects here. The number is 33 million as per Sanskrit shloka, right? We just call it koti. Koti is a numeral that has million as its equivalent in the West, right? So when we say 33 koti in Sanskrit, it actually translates to 33 million, right? Each of these 33 is not a humanic, humanic form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each of these 33 is an elemental form that we call as tattva. So, we are full of it, right? Like we breathe air and we are listening to each other through ether, those kind of tattvas, they all become represented as God, so that, there is a way to learn about these facets beyond the subliminal and look at them as actuals, right? So basically 33 or 33 million, these are all the elements in the universe that are there. I won't say elements, I will say facets in the universe, right? That are represented by a personified God, in terms of iconography. That's how we look at it. So, and that's why, when we worship gods, we don't worship one god for a certain thing and another god for a certain thing, like you in the previous podcast, you had spoken about the elephant god, and I told you what the history of that elephant god is, right? So we worship him for certain things, and we worship Lord Shiva for something else, Vishnu for something else, Krishna for something else. And when I say something else, it's not a need, it's more like it's what attracts you the most. Which of these gods resonate within you, right? And therefore, which of those 33 million principles resonate more inside of you? I think that's how that whole pantheon needs to be looked at, and not necessarily as a human population that is going to be immortal, because these are elements that are immortal. They have beyond us and they will continue to exist beyond humanity and beyond the climate change catastrophe that is coming. You know?
So the 33 million comes from Sanskrit, so I'm assuming that this is very ancient. Do we have any idea when the 33 million number was arrived at?
At least 5,000 to 6,000 years back.
Okay.
At least.
The reason is that, I mean, whenever I hear 33 on this show or other common numbers, you know, it makes you think. And when something is older, I mean, 33 is a very specific number, and, you know, you know, it's not lost to me that, you know, 33 is associated with the age of Christ's death, and that's been tied to, you know, whether it's you know, a longitude on the earth, or, you know, the Masonic order or whatever. I'm wondering if maybe that 33, the Hindu 33, is maybe the origin of that 33 that was sort of borrowed, but that's just rank speculation.
Nice. No, I like the connections that you make here. Wonderful.
Well, you know, it's like the child mind that absorbs a lot and sees connections all the time, and every now and then they, you know, from the mouth. I'm just a middle-aged babe, but from the mouth of babes, and by babes I mean a young child, not like, you know, not like a 70s guy looking at an attractive woman going, "Hey, babe."
Right. Got it.
All right. I'm sorry to have taken you off of that, but yeah. So okay. So yeah.
So that was the 33 million sign. You know, so we have a huge pantheon, as I was saying, and it's an endless, infinite loop of the different ways of realizing the supreme, right? So I'll give you a small example where I think it becomes a bit of mystical thing also, right? So if you consider Nataraja, which is a very, very popular iconography in the West also, right? It's that cosmic dance of Shiva, as it's called. And you know, at the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC project in Switzerland, they have this huge Nataraja statue in the front, you know, denoting it as a cosmic dance of Shiva and all that. So that Nataraja iconography has a very, very significant aspect in terms of mysticism, right? The Nataraja idol is a symbolic representation of the Orion constellation, right? So as above, so below, it becomes very clear, right? So there is a temple dedicated to the Lord in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, and the place is called Chidambaram. Chidambaram stands for Chit and Ambaram. Chit is, you know, your sense, your intellect, your mind, and Ambaram is the sky. So the sky or space or whatever, however you want to address it. So Nataraja is a personification of the element ether, right? One of the 5 elements, right? And it's very interesting when you go to that temple, in you know, the temple that I was speaking about, the iconography of the Lord and the metaphysics of the Lord. Metaphysics in the sense, what does the Lord represent? What does his vehicle represent? What is the directional significance of his existence and stuff like that, right? All of that metaphysics is built into that temple complex, right? So, for example, ether is the throat chakra, you know, representation, right? And throat chakra is all about voice and expression, right? So music and dance become a very, very innate form of expression since, you know, since time immemorial, right? Mm-hmm. Nataraja and the entire temple is dedicated to the music and dance forms of the complete South India. It's called Bharatanatyam, the dance form. It's got all the 108 poses of that dance form etched inside the temple, right? So there's a very cool, you know, correlation between the element, the chakra, and what it helps you to express in a physical form, right? Now, that is the depth of knowledge or the know-how that our ancients had, that they were able to translate something that is very, very esoteric into something that is absolutely physically tangible and understandable to the common man or woman, right? So for me, these elements of Hinduism are, I don't know. I mean, they seem to be unprecedented in other religions or communities in the world, right? We always struggle with understanding the metaphysics. We always struggle with understanding the esoteric. We kind of give it a wash. We just say, oh man, this is like, this is too deep. I cannot concentrate. Just imagine translating that to a temple complex where you get to learn about it, you feel it, you consume it, and you are actually a transformed person at the end of it, right? So I wanted to bring that in as an iconography example. One of the 33 million is this Shiva and his throat chakra, element, right? I feel that is extremely fabulous. And the link with the Orion constellation is that at the winter solstice or around that time, the constellation is right above this particular temple complex, right above. All right. So the deity inside and the constellation above is representing the same thing, as above, so below. Mm-hmm. So I find these things very fascinating, and they have taken the secession cycles also, the precession cycles, and not the secession, the precession cycles of once in 26,920 or 12,960 years, right? There is a longitudinal shift of the earth, right? Which kind of changes the axis, right? They've taken account of that also, so that the axis of the deity and the constellation remains the same. Now that's phenomenal astronomy for you, thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Which means that people had to know about it tens of thousands of years ago to track it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the depth that humanity has had. And I frequently call the modern civilization as the most primitive, because we don't know these aspects. We're still struggling to understand what climate change has in store for us.
Yeah, I mean, we in a lot of ways we have gotten dumber. I mean, there was a time in my memory where I knew what every street was and how to get everywhere. Now, without my GPS, I'm not sure that I could get more than 5 miles from where I want to go. I mean, I could get across the country because I can find I-70 or I-80, but I'm not sure that I could find a movie theater 4 towns over without GPS.
Very true, man. Very true.
I'm not sure if it's cool or not. It just is. But I think it's amazing what so many ancient civilizations knew about astronomy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the precession, the calendars that they created and the timelines. This isn't just something that happens once and then someone goes, oh, yeah, I remember great-grandpa talked about that 12,000 years ago. No, there was no great. So people had to be tracking this for generations and generations. I mean, hundreds of generations. And they, I mean, I guess you'd have to pass it along from, parent to child, teacher to student, so everyone knew exactly what to look for. And it takes a while to figure out what you're looking for. I don't know. That's mind-boggling to me. That's more mind-boggling to me than you die, your spirit or your soul goes back and comes back into another life. That's a concept I can get that concept. The real world stuff to me is, well, I already said it, mind-boggling. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In fact, in the North American, the Hopi tribe, the Hopi Native American tribe, they had created 7 villages, if I'm not wrong. Okay, 7 villages in different parts of one particular state or 2 states of the USA, right? And the skyward photo of that particular 7 villages, if it's zoomed out, it is in the shape of the Orion constellation.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Okay, well, there you go again. As above, so as below, and we see that time and time again. And you know what? It didn't strike me until this show that Orion. Well, there you go. You got you got the line. You have 2 stars up. You have 2 stars down. It's right. No wonder it's so prevalent. Aside from the fact that also, basically points to the Big Dipper or Ursa Major, which points to the North Star, which is a, like a nice little map up there in the sky that would be a central point for, I guess, for
exactly
everyone between the tropics, right?
And at the bottom of it, it's the Sirius star, and at the top of it, it's the Pleiades constellation, right? I mean, it points towards the Pleiades in the end.
Yeah.
So it's a huge cosmic story, yes.
Very good. Yeah, it's all tied together, which is very interesting. And and we had we've had a couple of shows on astrology, actually probably accidentally 3. One that's called astrology, and I think all of them helped understand this a little bit. But all the shows seem to have some astrological or astronomical counterpart in them, including this one right here. So, all right, I'm going to try to stop my little musings and let you continue.
No, I think I had that to say about the mystical aspects of our Hinduism and how, that gets translated into something that is tangible and consumable by the public. Right? So I just wanted to make that point.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is, I mean, astrology is a way to translate it to the public, because everybody looks up and sees the same sky, at least where they are. I mean, obviously you see a different sky in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Now because of pollution, it could be different, over miles. But I have a Garden Views that came out recently on light pollution from a space lawyer, and that's her cause. And that's a little cheap plug, but it is related to sort of what we've done in modernity to impact our view of the skies and its impact on the earth, and not just people, but also animals, especially nocturnal migratory animals. But again, cheap plug, Garden Views, look for that.
Absolutely.
All right, sorry about that. So, I'm at your mercy. I don't know if you want to continue with the mysticism or you want to jump back to the tenets, or if it's even divisible. Maybe they're one and the same.
Yeah, I think, more on the mysticism in terms of temples, I think we just glanced at it. I just gave a cursory, trailer kind of a thing. And also, the fact is, a lot of Hinduism has evolved with time. We are not a hard-pressed bunch of people who say that this is right and that is wrong, right? We have evolved over time. We have evolved with time, with the compulsions of those times. And, it's been a very, very broad-based, democratic approach, in the sense that it had the people involved in altering the status quo from one phase to the other. And like I said, it takes time, but it's happened seamlessly, right? I mean, we are the only country that has not invaded any other country for in terms of conquest or in terms of conversions or whatever it is, right? So imagine that across eons, let's say around 5,000 to 10,000 years or even more, this has just gone on in an unparalleled way with a community of people that is, like you said, you're transmitting knowledge from generation to generation, not in a written manner, but in an oral way, right? And that's the problem with the dating mechanism that we have today, right? There are no written proofs of these, the existence of these, which don't date back beyond, let's say, 4,000 or 5,000 BC. That doesn't mean to say that they did not exist before that, right? And because we are a oral transmission community, and I'm not using the religion word here, whenever I say community, just think of it as the entire Hinduism, right? We are an oral generation, spreading the word of Vedas and teaching Vedas from one generation to the other generation only through oral mechanisms, right? There's no written content, right? That has gone on seamlessly for eons, right? Now, the secret to that is perplexing. It seems that a lot of these chants or the shlokas that we call it, right? The mantras that you hear so much about.
Mhm.
These mantras are codified meanings at multiple levels of existence, of human knowledge or existence, right? Also, the idea was not to dilute the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the other. Let me take a very contemporary example. I am into software engineering. The client gives us a requirement. We understand the requirement in a different way in spite of having it written, right? And we create something that is not exactly what the client had in mind, right? So this happens, lost in translation, right? Now, in the case of oral transmission of that knowledge, there was no loss of transmission. There was no loss of any information. The reason behind that is every chant and mantra was codified in 8 or 9 different methods, right? And we call this as the Veda Patha, Vedapatha. Veda Patha means the telling of the Vedas, the chanting of the Vedas, or the learning of the Vedas, however you want to look at it, right? So there are different ways of reciting the same chant, right, where the syllables are jumbled up, or the syllables are repetitive, or the syllables are counted for 1 or 3 and then the shloka is completed, right? So each of these ways of reciting is a way of ensuring that you're learning the shloka in the right way, in the right sonorific form, right, so that the sounding is perfect. And at the same time, you are also ensuring that that particular piece of data or the code gets transmitted to the next generation as it is. So, think of it as like a 24-bit encryption or a 32-bit encryption. That cannot change. Your security key will not change. This is that security layer, right? This ensured that across 10,000 years, we haven't lost any information that we've received. That for me is a phenomenal act of human intellect and prowess.
Am I correct that what you're referring to is basically the storytelling of the teacher to the student in the form of, I think it's Krishna talking to, is it Arjuna?
No, that is much later.
Okay.
Much later. I'm talking about aeons before that, where the Vedas were kind of distributed orally. See, when the Mahabharata happened, the writing had resumed, right? In fact, the author of Mahabharata is Vedavyas, who I spoke about in the previous podcast, right? So he actually writes it, or he makes Lord Ganesha write it, as per the stories and stuff like that. So writing had started by the time Mahabharata was around, right? I am talking about the transmission of knowledge at least, 5,000 years before that.
Way earlier.
Right? Way earlier, where there was no writing system. But the efficacy of the oral transmission of knowledge was unparalleled. I mean, just imagine you and me talking to each other, and you ensure that whatever you have in your mind and you're dissipating it to me, I take it 100% verbatim, and I am able to give it back again to somebody else. That is the kind of system that was established. It was called the Gurukul system. All of the Hinduism knowledge was transmitted this way, right? Nowadays, we call it the Indic knowledge systems. IKS is the acronym. You can look it up on Google. This is the basis of the Indic knowledge systems. Everything was orally transmitted, 100% accuracy, no leakage of data, no lost in translation. I mean, beat that with today's systems.
I'm not even going to try. I'm trying to translate this like music. Like you have rappers. They will know every word in the catalog of their music. Might be thousands of songs, and they can do it, and probably so can their thousands of fans. And get every word correct because it's in certain patterns. But then if you hear it in acoustics or a cover song, it may take you a second, but then you're going to go, I know that. And so I guess what you're saying, there's so many different patterns of the same message, but you're always hearing the same message. So you recognize that message, 10 or 12 different ways.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
Right? So imagine the creation of such algorithms or such rules. I mean, what depth of knowledge would those guys had that they were able to, kind of create this whole system in the first place, right? That, for me is a pinnacle of what Hinduism should be spoken for, right? It's not about the gods. It's not about the, the kind of wars or battles that were fought, or it's not about the hybrid gods and stuff like that. It's about these underlying systems of thought that catapulted this community to be the longest running surviving indigenous community in the world.
That's amazing. And the Indus Valley, which I guess is the origins of India, I mean, there's a pretty good argument that it might be the actual first fertile crescent, not Sumeria, but there's a lot of crossover there, and a lot of cultures pass through there both ways. And when I mean pass through, I don't mean like they just ran on through it. These migrations were centuries.
Absolutely, and it was a trade route, right? They were trading, between the civilizations. So I would say Indus Valley is, my thoughts are that it is parallel Vedic or even a little post-Vedic. Some people say it could be the pre-Vedic, but I kind of don't see it, because it's not dating back to a very, very distant past, right? It's still dating back to at least during the occurrence of Mahabharata or a little before that. So it cannot define the timeline of a civilization that's timeless. So that said, Indus Valley civilization was a very wide civilization. So I am in touch with historians and researchers, as you know, right, on my startup of Indic heritage and history, right? So it's fascinating to know that the same symbols of the bull and all that you would have seen in those Indus seals, right, those tablets, they are found as far as Haifa, which is in Israel, right? And they are also the boats that were unearthed in Egypt, Ayan Sukna, that is the place, that's the name of the place. They found coir ropes in the boats, right? Now, nowhere in Africa or nearby the Mediterranean areas, there is the manufacturing of coir, right? Coir is a jute-ridden rope, right? That comes from the southern state of Kerala in India, and it is still known for it, right? And because the boats, the catamarans or whatever, it was creation of, the southern civilization, southern state of India, these things add up so beautifully into that trade route, right? The origin could be from the east to the west, for example, right? So the theory goes that the Indus Valley civilization stretched from Hanoi in the east to Haifa in the west, which is Vietnam today and Israel today, right? Now that is a wide expanse of a civilization that has immense learning, knowledge, commerce, right, to dissipate to the rest of the world. And maybe Sumerians, Egyptians, they kind of learned from that and they broadened their civilizations around it, which is great, right? So Indus Valley was that particular fertile crescent, as you said, right, before the other civilizations came up. Now, interesting thing is, there was a research carried out in 1960s, okay, by a person who wanted to find out what are the origin of such rich economics in the Bronze Age or pre-Bronze Age, right? His name was Angus Madison, okay, and he took it upon himself to create this as the World Report, from 2000 BC to 2000 AD or something like that, He created that report. This was launched in 60s. I think it was presented at the United Nations also. Now, his theory was at 1 BCE, which is, before Common Era, or, in the West, it was, in the earlier notions. It was called 1 BC, before Christ, right? China and India were the richest economies, right? Contributing 33% of the GDP as we understand it today back then. 1/3 of the world's GDP was across these two countries next to each other. Now the question is, all right, that is at 1 BC, but what made these two nations so rich and commercially so viable that they were actually the largest powers as it may be back then, So you have to go back in time, much before 1 BC. And that is where the Indus Valley civilization comes in because of its rich trade and commerce and the entire tin belt. What is Bronze Age civilization? What does it need? It needs two periodic elements, copper and tin, right? It's an alloy, right? Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. Now, the richest tin reserves in the world are in the Gangetic plains of India, present Bangladesh, present Pakistan, and goes down to Burma, right? And this was the exact trade route that Indus Valley civilization followed during the Bronze Age, right? Even today, the tin extracts that are found there are unparalleled in the world, right? So now we know the secret of how that economy prospered, okay? And the next part that I'm going to talk to you about is where the philosophy comes in, which is very, very interesting. One thing is to prosper, become the richest. The other thing is to sustain that richness over eons, right? Which, as a modern civilization, we are we are on the verge of failure there, right? Now, what that civilization purported was that I will use whatever I need, right? I don't have a greed. Those who want to make use of it, please take it, right? It is called the Shady Dharma. In English, it can be spelled as Shadee, right? Shady Dharma is basically commonwealth, right? The wealth is common. You share it so that you also grow while I'm growing, and let this richness flourish many more generations together. Now, that is a very, very giving mentality, right? In spirituality, we talk about giving, and that's when you will be getting, right? Now, this was a very, very early civilization, and the secret behind the richness of the civilization, I believe, is this spiritual tenet of giving and the absence of greed as an element of civilization. So I wanted to talk that as a part of the Indus Valley civilization, because usually anything to do with Indus Valley civilization starts and stops at the bull and all of these. There's a deeper meaning to these civilizations. We have to look at humanity as a purposeful, emotional beings who were there to create something of a legacy that can be talked about generations later. And this civilization did just that, like many other civilizations.
It was more communal.
Exactly. And if we can pull something like that in today's world, I don't think we will be having economies in recession or any riots based on low economy background and stuff like that.
It would be interesting. I mean, we just crossed 8 billion people, so I guess on one side it sounds tough to provide for all of those folks. On the other side, we must be doing something right or right enough to keep growing, I guess. But yeah, so the bull, I wonder that's the Brahma, right?
All right, that's a good question. There are a lot of theories around the bull. First of all, it's a species of bull that is native to India.
Okay.
It's called the Bas indicus, BAS indicus, and that bull is a symbolism both for the spiritual side as well as for the metallurgical side. When I say metallurgical, each of these ingots, it is professed that these are bills of material for the trade that is happening between the nations, right? So like we send a bill of material along with a courier nowadays, these ingots used to be symbolic of that. And a lot of people believe that the bull is one of the elements of the periodic table that was, part of this whole, theory. Another theory talks about the bull being the vehicle of Lord Shiva, right? It's called the Nandi. It's the vehicle of Lord Shiva. So that is also another theory that, it kind of aligns with the pre-Vedic or the Vedic deities. I have not heard about the Brahma comparison. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about it and let me capture the gist.
All right. Well, I think enough of my listeners know that I have a giant vice that's been in my life for close to 50 years, which is watching professional wrestling. And where do I get the Brahma and the bull from? The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He's got a tattoo on his arm of a bull, and he said it was a Brahman bull. So I have always put the connection between Brahma and bull, probably because of him. Where he got it from, I don't know. I don't know if I heard of the reference before, but I'm guessing if Brahma just means sort of like, top dog, king, powerful person, then maybe he just took Brahma as powerful and put it with a bull that looks powerful and put them together. And it may have absolutely no correlation to anything from India, Hindu, Buddhist, East, anywhere. I was going to try and draw correlations to Baal or Baal, and then to the Minotaur, and lots of other, bull references in comparative mythology or proto-mythology. But I think if my starting point is professional wrestling, I'm probably, starting on a pretty shaky ground. So maybe we should just forget about the Brahma and the bull as being one and the same.
I love it. Let me look that up now.
I mean, listen, the Rock is a very smart man, but that doesn't mean he didn't. When he did this, he was like 23 years old. So I think maybe I'll leave the expertise to you.
Sure. Let me read up. I mean, there could definitely be some link because everybody is open to some kind of like you said, making the connects and stuff like that. So all these are quite what do you say, surprising.
It could also be just one of those things like we just learned with Juteland and Hungary, that just one of these coincidences that somewhere else a word that sounds like Brahma or is Brahma means something entirely different and is associated with a bull. I mean, it's a big world with lots of people and lots of languages.
Yeah, lots of languages, lots of interpretations, because mind is a funny thing. It interprets the way it wants to, and you are part of the mind, so you will connect to certain things and not connect to certain others. So, yeah.
That's right. So as The Rock would ask, Jeff, what do you think? And I would start, and he would say, it doesn't matter what I think. So,
perfect.
So let's get back. Let's get off The Rock, and then let's get back into actual information. So I sidetracked you, but you were on the bull, or you were on the Brahma. No, you were on the bull, which is probably nothing to do with Brahma in Hinduism.
Yeah, I think bull is a very, very significant animal form for us, and as I said, it's the vehicle of Lord Shiva, one of the trinities as they call it, apart from Vishnu and Brahma. Right? As I said, our trinity has a clear mapping to the creation, destruction, and protection, right? Preservation. Right. And at the same time, each of these trinities, they actually lead to eventual creation and destruction also, right? So they are into multiple role plays, if I can use the present day lingo. So each of them is a creator, preserver, and a destroyer in his own right. Right. And each of them has a vehicle, like any gods in Hinduism do. Every god has a vehicle, and there is a very esoteric explanation for the vehicle, and at the same time there is a very granular and earthly explanation for these vehicles. Right? So on the bull, Nandi as it's called, it was definitely not the original vehicle of Shiva. It was was a devotee, and there is a story which I'm not too sure about, and without being sure, I don't want to be talking about it and kind of mislead the audience here. But it was blessed to be the vehicle of Shiva, right? And the female form cow is very holy for us, very, very sacred, right? And we call it the Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu means the giver of anything and everything, right? Again, that giving is emphasized, right? So for us, cow is very sacred, and it is believed to have within itself a lot of treasures, tangible and intangible. Right? So we consider it holy and sacred, and that's where we have a kind of a whiplash moment with the West, where there is a staple food, the beef, basically. So be that as it may, now that is the sacredness of the bull and the cow, and the kind of importance that we give to the animals, right? And that's the other dimension or the beauty of Hinduism, where we are nature worshippers. We believe in giving equal stands to all the creatures on this planet, and that we are part of the planet, and we do not own or run or save the planet, as it's made out to be today, right? I mean, climate change is not about saving the planet, it's saving humanity. We are selfish enough to, kind of call it save the planet. So I just want to bring that aspect here when we're talking about bull. So we worship trees. There are certain trees that are very, very sacred. And if you travel to India, there'll be temples that'll be formed around those trees. And the tree area would be kind of fenced. That's the sacred, holy tree. And a lot of these trees would be, hundreds of years old, right? So, we have certain amount of trees that are very, very sacred that we worship. Certain creatures, when I say creatures, insects or other forms, animals, as I said, plants, right? We worship all of these. And I think that is a way of coexisting with nature, where you bring in a divine element into every creation on this planet, and therefore you are not licensed to kill/destroy it. Right? In fact, in the earlier days, in the Ramayana, which is the other epic apart from Mahabharata, which I had spoken to you about in the previous podcast, right? There is a way that the forest dwellers, they go to each of these trees and they request their permission to be cut so that they can be made use of, as firewood or as making a hermitage or whatever it is, right? So that's the kind of devotion and respect that we had for nature, which kind of allowed us to coexist with nature for at least 10,000 to 12,000 years, right? And right after the 17th century, when the Industrial Revolution started, we are just 300 years into it, and we are a disaster civilization, right? I think so. There's a lot to be learned about how to educate people on the sameness of these, living beings, right? So that it works better for the planet, right? Right now we are struggling to educate children, I mean, what do we educate children? Don't cut trees, don't kill animals. I mean, when was the last time that you were preached to and you agreed? It just doesn't happen that way, right? It just doesn't happen that way. Everything is a storytelling aspect. Humans love stories. We love to identify with other elements of this planet. And if you make that sacred or holy, I mean, that is a very, very novel and an innovative way of preserving nature. And that Hinduism did around 10,000, 12,000 years back, or even earlier.
It sounds similar to a lot of other animisms, or animistic philosophies, religions, whatever. We're basically using those terms interchangeably at this point. Yeah, I remember when I was, I don't know, it was probably freshman year of high school, so I'm probably 14 or 15. So we're 4 decades ago, and learning about India, and that the cow was sacred and people didn't eat meat, they didn't kill cows. And at the time, I think India was going through a lot of hunger, and it was just seemed like a strange thing to do, that you have cows, which was a source of meat and could feed people, and and this is America. Everything beef is, beef does the body good. And, but of course you couldn't, because it's, been part of the identity of the culture for millennia.
And that's a great point you bring in. That's an amazing perspective that you bring in, that, even hunger didn't drive us to kill them. I mean, just imagine the depth of feeling and emotions that has been transmitted across how many, at least 30 to 40 generations, if not more, right? Also, I'd like to mention here that, there is research ongoing about the cattle ranches and stuff like that, right? I mean, suddenly these things are in the news, right? Global warming, climate change. Cows, beef. I mean, I'm sorry if it's a touchy topic for your audience. I'm, disclaimer right now. I just want to share this piece that, most of the carbon footprint, a large part of it is coming out from the culling of cows, right? And therefore, I am not sure if that is why Hinduism made it the most sacred animal form, right? To avoid this culling and to avoid destruction of the planet. I am not sure. It's just a thought that I have in my head. And it seems to add up, because otherwise the sudden thing about global warming and climate change, I mean, we couldn't have been so bad at our industries that we've actually triggered it. It has to be some other cause. And the food industry seems to be the main cause of all of this.
Well, there's no denying it's a large part of it. I know a little bit about it, but not enough to be any sort of authority. But I do know that the way modern cattling, it's bad for the soil as well, and then that's a large part of the climate change. If the not just cows, but all of the herd animals were permitted to free range, there'd probably be a way to balance that, much like the First Nations folks did. But everything is messed. I am not wagging. I'm not coming on a high horse here by any means. I eat everything. But in America, we're like, oh, people eat dog. They eat cats there. Ooh, that's gross. Meanwhile, we eat veal. That's baby cows. We have baby back ribs. Well, I mean, that's probably from a young pig. You eat lamb chops, which is different than a goat chop or a sheep chop. It's a lamb chop, meaning it's a child, because the meat is more tender. I mean, we eat everything. We have chicken wings all over the place. I mean, if you've ever seen a chicken, that's not what a chicken wing looks like. The chicken wing looks like the drumstick that you eat. So, I mean, we should just, listen, this is dawning on me a little bit late in life, but it's never too late, right? But we shouldn't look down on anyone because they eat squirrels or fried locusts, or they, or whatever it is, because, we eat pretty much anything that's out there, at least I know that I do. So,
I don't think it's a targeted thing. On another topic, you brought about Buddhism and all that. The Buddha, the Buddha, Siddhartha, right? Mm-hmm. He professed non-violence and don't harm animals and other forms of life and stuff like that. And right now, if I look at two countries, that is China and Sri Lanka, that is a heavy Buddhist population, right? Sri Lanka, anyway, it's on the verge of the economic collapse. But it was the most violent country till recently. Mm-hmm. And, the guys who were practicing Buddhism, they were supposed to be this, saintly and non-violent and stuff like that. They chop people and animals and stuff like that. China, I mean, the less said, the better. I don't think I think they they'll consume anything that is moving, including human babies. I hope you know that. The dead fetuses, they consume it.
Wow.
I
did not know that.
Talk about Buddhism of that sort, and you kind of get repulsive.
So we're all hypocrites in our own way, and but this is Garden of Doom. We're not here to solve that. We're just here to understand the doom, though. If we could solve it, that'd be swell. I just don't think that I'm going to be the source of that solution. Maybe I'll stumble upon the guest that knows everything. Okay. All right. So there's a few things about Hinduism that sort of everyone knows about. I think we touched on the sacred cow, so I don't think we need to really go on that much further. I assume that that's sort of, an extension of Mother Earth. You don't kill the earth. The cow was the source of milk, and you can look back to early times that one of the first domesticated animals, and milk and don't kill. That sort of mother's milk sort of goes. There's a lot of origin myths where there's a giant and a mountain or a void and salt, but strangely in a few of them, from Norse to I think Chinese and a few others, like there's also like a cow there, a cosmic cow, which I think is a representation of Mother Earth. That the cow is sort of the representation of Earth before Earth. So we have the cow. One of the other items is reincarnation, which I guess is the cycle. But what is the Hindu interpretation or definition of reincarnation?
Yeah. So the Hindu explanation of reincarnation, very, very interesting, good stuff, man. I mean, this is like deep talks. Reincarnation for Hinduism is a facet of karma, right? Also, it's not limited to just humans, right? There are instances in our history, like Ramayana and Mahabharata, that Mahabharata is full of reincarnations. The guys who are waging the battle, in their previous births, there were some asuras or rakshasas, meaning the demonic, beings, and in this birth they were the pious ones, right? So, it's all about doing what your duty is, and then reaping the consequences, right? So this is your platform to do your duties, and this is also the platform. When I say platform, it's the earth. This is also the platform where you reap the consequences, right? So, we have a lot of these tales that, don't harm lizards or don't kill snakes and stuff like that. Because in the next birth, even if you're born as a human, you might have what is called as a dosha, D-O-S-H-A, which is a malefic element in your personality, right? Astrologically, we create those charts and stuff like that. There'll be a malefic, aspect of that personality, which will have an impact on your present life, right? So therefore, based on your past life actions, you bear the consequences in the next life. Now, there are instances where the human birth is considered the topmost in that evolution cycle or in that reincarnation cycle, in the sense that you would have been an animal or a creature in your past births, and based on pious deeds or whatever you've done your duty to the best possible extent, you get rewarded with this human birth, right? Now the possibility of going down to animism or the animal planet is always there. If you don't do deeds according to what you are persuaded to, you will end up in a inferior life form, right?
So there's not heaven or hell. It's just whether or not you, I guess, devolve into a lesser life form where you're more vulnerable, or you stay in human form, which I guess is tied to karma as being more long term than immediate. It's a slow moving boomerang.
Absolutely.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's the earliest form of performance appraisal.
Now, is this also tied into the caste system? Is that tied into Hinduism, or is that just something that evolves in a parallel course?
It's part of it because Hinduism, as I said, it's all encompassing, right? Everything is part of these the entire community, right? So let's say this is a fact of life, right? You can control everything in the present life except who your ancestors or your parents are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Abrahamic religions struggle to explain the philosophy or the logic behind this, right? I mean, notwithstanding the belief of reincarnation and all that, right? So our Hinduism says that you will get the family that you so deserve based on the actions that you perform in this birth, and therefore there is a chance to evolve or devolve, as you said, right? So let's say in the rudimentary thing, the upper caste guy this time, right? There is a high possibility that he or she can be born as an animal in the next life, or as a lower caste, or whatever, a human birth itself. But these are all intertwined, and these are all interconnected. It's basically action oriented, intent oriented, and the outcome is for yourself to bear, right? Now, if we look at the modern systemic approaches, right, we have this system approach where there are three kinds of systems. One is intent oriented, one is outcome oriented, and the other one is action oriented, right? I mean, even our personalities are divided based on that, right? It's the same logic that has been put into the whole reincarnation algorithm, if I can say that, right? So therefore, reincarnation decides your present based on your past, and it also decides your future based on your past, which includes the present now. So it's a cycle.
But is there ever an ascension into like a heaven equivalent or a descent into a hell equivalent, or is yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the ascension is you dissolve into the supreme, you dissolve into the God form, right? And that dissolution, when it happens, you realize that you were part of that God form all this while, right? And that realization is called moksha or nirvana, right? Even Buddhism has that concept, right? The same words are used. So it's not, I mean, we can look at it that, yeah, he's reached a better place, right? Which is in the midst of the God form or the supreme form. Is it heaven or hell? Not too sure, because all the consequences that you will bear for every birth of yours would be on this platform called Earth.
Right? It's close enough to heaven that we can. I mean, it doesn't have to be an exact equivalent, but if you've ascended to join the Godhood collective, the immortal. I mean that.
Exactly.
Is there a bad version? Is there a hell version, a demonic collective, or is you serve your penance in the cycle on the platform of Earth?
You serve your penance in a cyclic form on the planet Earth. There is a demonic world. In our Vedas, there are 7 different types of worlds, right? You can loosely translate them to planets or retain them as, multiverses kind of a philosophy. And one of the worlds is the netherworld. Netherworld as in the underworld, or the bad one, or the, kind of the demonic one.
The lowlands.
So, yeah, the lowlands. So each of the human birth, the deciding factor for your next birth would be your actions, and you will be placed in any of these worlds, right? So either you dissolve into the supreme form, or you kind of relive and become better through these worlds. And the multiverse is that there are different Earths, right? It's not like these are different planets. It's not like, the low world is Mercury or Venus, and the higher world is Mars and Jupiter. It's not like that.
Right. It's not like Thor's Asgard where there's 9 planets. It's like a dimension. It's sort of they're adjacent.
Yes, a dimension within the world where we get to, reap the consequences of our actions.
Okay.
You go through hell. Let's say you go through an accident, right? God forbid, right? It's part of that evolution.
Right.
I mean, this is my way of understanding this whole cycle of birth and death and what you deserve and what you accomplish.
Gotcha. I don't know how important it is, but what are the castes? I think, is there, like, I know that there's like a priestly royal caste, there's a warrior caste, there's a merchant class, and then like a worker class. Is it 4 or is there 5 castes?
There are 4 classes.
4.
There are 4 classes, and I don't know if I can call it caste or class because, the modern understanding of any of these systems is that by birth you take it up, right? You're born into that family, so you become that, right? Originally in the Vedas and in our philosophies, it was never that way. It was purely based on performance. In fact, some of our rishis or the sages that gave us all these, the Vedas and the shlokas, a lot of them were non-Brahmin by caste, right, which is the priestly class. They were Kshatriyas. A lot of them were Shudras also, which is the lowest caste, so-called lowest caste, right? It's not a high and low as we see it today in the modern world, right? Think of it like, there is a CEO, there's a CTO, there's a CFO, and there are employees with various designations. It is that kind of a system, right? It's designed to make handling simpler, right? Now, there is no CTO who cannot become the CEO in the same lifetime based on his performance, right? There is no senior engineer or a foreman who cannot dream or aspire to become an owner of a business, right? There's nothing that stops him. It's based on his actions, and he'll reap the consequences, right? In the same way, the Varna system was designed. Varna is the loosely called caste system, right? It was purely based on performance. In the same lifetime, you can grow or you can regress, right? With time, it kind of got simplified or diluted into this fact that the moment you're born into a certain caste family, you become that caste, right? And it was never, thereafter, it was never performance-based, right? And, slowly we are realizing that as a community that it was a kind of a mistake or a fallacy that we got into, right? And undoing that is the biggest legacy that the present generation can leave behind, is my opinion.
Okay. I remember when I was, again, I'm going back to I had a very progressive teacher in high school, and kudos to her. I'm afraid I can't even remember her name, but she was definitely teaching her things that other people in public schools in New York were not learning about. But I remember that there was one class called the Untouchables, and what you're saying is that's a sort of a gross overstatement, and it's probably, if it's not a Western construct, it's a modern construct.
Absolutely.
Okay. It was more like everyone was sort of born into a presumed cog in the machine, cog in the wheel, but you could advance. It was a meritocracy.
Yes, absolutely. Performance-based meritocracy.
Okay. All right. Is there an Indian zodiac that's different than the Western or the Chinese or a zodiac at all? I mean, it sounds like there is.
Wow, that's a cool question. So when you say zodiac, you mean the 12 signs, right? The Scorpions, Sagittarius, Capricorn, and stuff, right? So there are 12 even in us, and it's the same symbology, different names, right? The only difference between, I'm not sure about the Chinese zodiac, the Western zodiac and the Indian zodiac, we follow the lunar system. We take moon as the basis of the astrological positions of these
so the zodiacs. Chinese.
Yeah. Unlike the sun as the center for the Western zodiac, right? So we call it sun sign. Here we call it moon sign, right? So I think that's a big difference in terms of looking at it from an astrological perspective. So because moon is a sign of emotion and moods and stuff like that. So moon sign, you'll have a lot of people in the same moon sign displaying different emotions or different behaviors, right? And this is where the Western zodiac struggles to comprehend as to how two Scorpions are so different while they are born on the same day. Why are they so different? And that is where our astrology can kind of align that to the moon sign, because the moon's behaviors are dictated by the moon. And our zodiac system is also based on the time of birth. Your time of birth is very, very important in positioning your zodiac.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Right? So it's not like you're born on, let's say, 2nd Feb and you are whatever zodiac sign, It's not like that. It's not as simple as that. It's based on the time of birth, and that decides your astral position in the zodiac, right? Mm-hmm. And a star is given to you, which is part of the zodiac, and you're called that. You're given a name of that star as your birth name, right? And that star decides your moods, your behaviors, your future, whatever you want to call it, right? And a lot of our rituals that we do in the Vedic communities, the first thing that we ask is your star, because that decides what the priest would do in terms of providing the puja, the prayers and stuff like that. So I think our zodiac system is twofold different. One is it's moon-based. The second one, the time of birth is absolutely critical in defining the personality.
Are the zodiac signs, are they the same as the Chinese, like the monkey, the dragon, versus the sun signs, which are, like you said, the scorpion, the crab?
The same as the sun sign.
Okay, so you have found the same images, but in stars that follow the moon?
The lunar cycle, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are they the same as the sun constellations, just how they follow the moon, or are they different star systems that you found the same symbols for?
So they are the same constellations.
Mm-hmm.
And the stars that I was talking about is within each of those constellations. So let's say you're born at a time which is corresponding to the Leo constellation. We call it the Simha Rashi. Simha in Sanskrit means lion, and therefore it's very, very correlating to Leo, right? Leo is also lion, and within that lion there will be maybe 7 or 8 stars that form that constellation, right? One of those stars will be in bang alignment at the time of your birth, and that becomes your birth star. And based on that, your horoscope is drawn for the rest of your life. What you would go through, what are the ones that you have to be careful about, what duties can you do to avoid any bad karmas of the past life, right? The doshas that I was talking to you about earlier, they're all projected on that horoscope based on the time of birth and the star alignment in your constellation, which is your zodiac.
Right. This is... I don't know that I'm ever going to fully understand astrology, because I can't even see the symbols that people point to. I look in the stars, I don't see those shapes, but that's all right. So this is maybe trite, but shorthand way of understanding the world here in the U.S. People say, if you meet a Patel, they're a business person. They're going to be a merchant or a trade person. That's Patel. If you meet a Gupta, they're royal. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, there is. Each of them is loosely mapped to the caste system that we were talking about. See, in the caste system, there is the priestly layer that you were talking about. They are called Brahmins, because they have descended from Brahma, the knowledge and stuff like that. The next class is Kshatriya, or the warrior class. They were our warriors, our kings and stuff like that, right? And the soldiers and all that. The next layer was Vaishyas, which is the commerce, the merchants, right? The last layer is the Shudras, or the the workers, the laborers, the cleaners, or whatever it is. So loosely, the Patels and the Guptas will fall under the Vaishya class, and therefore commerce and the merchants thing comes naturally to them as a community. Brahmins, knowledge comes naturally to them. I mean, they want to seek, they want to learn, they want to teach, right? They want to dissipate and all. Kshatriyas, they are like firebrand, they are, they are hot-blooded, they are reactionary, right? You need those qualities in that to be able to defend your land, right? So a lot of these has an ancestry to this particular system, but a lot of the Guptas as kings were different from the Guptas of today, largely. The Guptas of today are more like the merchant class, right? The Guptas of the old age were a Kshatriya clan that was called Gupt, G-U-P-T, okay? And I mean, some of the Guptas today may be related to them, but most of them are not.
Okay. Is the word for lion, is it Punjab? Is that correct?
So the Sanskrit word for lion, as I said, is Simha, S-I-M-H-A, and that is where Singapore gets its name from.
Oh.
Singapore is a Sanskrit name. Singha means lion, and Por means city or a town or a country or a nation, right? So Singapore is the land of the lion, right? So lion is usually called...
Singh. So people with the last name Singh, it's lion.
Singh, yeah. Singh is lion, right?
Okay.
And Punjab is actually a word that signifies Panch, which is 5, the land of 5 rivers. So Punjab is a state which is now divided between Pakistan and India. I mean, thanks to the Brits. But it is a state of 5 rivers that ensure that the plain is fertile, and it's a very, very agrarian, rich soil, right? So Punjab is actually a word for the land of 5 rivers. Panch in Sanskrit means 5, and Panch and it became Punjab, and it's the land of 5 rivers. So the lion part of Panja in Sanskrit, P-A-N-G-A-J-A, in Hindi maybe, it means the claws.
Ah, okay. I knew there was some correlation somewhere, but
but that has nothing to do with the state of Punjab, which is the land of 5 rivers. There's no claws and lion element there.
Okay. I know India and Afghanistan are 2 different countries, but I have a colleague who's of Afghanistani descent, and he comes from the valley of I think it's 5 lions, which is symbolic for 5 mountains. So of course it's different languages, and Afghanistan, India, from where I'm sitting, are close together, but they're probably closest border to closest border, probably 1,000 miles away, or maybe more.
But it's interesting that you bring in Afghanistan, because that was part of the India tens of thousands of years ago. I will give you a story there. In Mahabharata, which culminates in Lord Krishna preaching to Arjuna the Bhagavad Gita, right? In that Mahabharata story, there are 2 brother families, right? I was telling this to you in the previous podcast. So Pandavas and Kauravas. So the mother of Kauravas, right? There are 100 Kauravas, and this mother gave birth to 100 sons and 1 daughter, right? So the mother of that Kaurava, her name was Gandhari, Gandhari. Gandhari means that she was from Gandhar, Gandhar, and that is the modern Kandahar of Afghanistan.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Okay, so Afghanistan also has a lot of temples. I know there is a Ganesh temple, and there are practicing Hindus in Afghanistan, and it used to be part of the Indus Valley civilization also to a great extent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a political border now, but there is a semblance of culture between all these nations.
Yeah, well, colonialization is, and made borders that were completely artificial, and no clan, tribe, ethnic lines, whatever the right term is. There's one other thing. When you were talking about the 108 dance moves that were reflected in iconography, that was sort of reflecting the dance in the sky, it led me to something else that India is famous for. I am not sure if this is tied to Hinduism, mystical or otherwise, but everybody knows the Kama Sutra. I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what it is, but it's like a book of, let's just say, sexual iconography. Say the word for me. Iconography. I have trouble with some words. That's one of them. Maybe it's because I said sexual and I got shy. Who knows? Anyway, so people look at it as like a guidebook or an instruction book, but I mean it's more than that, isn't it? Isn't it tied to chakras and PowerPoints and tantric, with all words that we're familiar with, but maybe we don't know how they're tied together?
What happened in the West in 30s, 40s, 50s, or even 60s was this whole movement to feel liberated, right? And sexuality was the primordial feeling of that liberation, right? Sure. So the devotion to sexuality, the dedication to sexuality, to the thing to make sexuality open, right? So Kama Sutra, I would say, was a hapless victim of that.
Okay.
I mean, it was kind of, it was devolved into this sexual manual, right? The how-to manual for sex.
Right.
Right? Of course it is that, right? But that is a very, very minor aspect of Kama Sutra based on my reading, okay? Tantric, yes. A lot of energy positions also. A lot of relations to the chakra, right? And a lot of relation to how a man and woman should coexist, should live. Because the focus for the West of Kama Sutra was the pleasure part of it, or the visual part of the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. The focus for us is, the way we looked at Kama Sutra is, sexuality was a very, very normal and a common thing in pre-Islamic India. Okay. In fact, our temples have all kinds of sexual positions, right? Carved in, right? And there are these Khajuraho temples which are dedicated to all of these, to talk about sexuality and stuff like that. Very normal. In fact, a lot of us believe that women and men, the equality or the inclusivity that we talk about in the modern world today, we believed in it 1,000 years ago, where men and women would dress up bare-chested, right? So, women bare-chested, normal. Okay. There was nothing like, excitement and stuff like that. It was normal. And the civilizational tenet of India was that you're married to one, so you be loyal to one, right? But, I mean, this is the way of life, so, let them also be, and they'll be equal to you, so therefore they will also be bare-chested at the top, right? I'm just kind of surmising this for an audience that can understand this in a more palatable way, right? So that is where we come from. For us, it was a very normal thing. It's as normal as we talk about eating chips today. Mm-hmm. So, not to make your audience hungry, right? So the thing is, Kama Sutra was one of the many documents that dealt with sexual positioning, because sexuality is a way of realization of God or the Supreme. As I said, we believe in multiple paths to realization of Supreme. This was one way, right? Okay. And that is loosely called Tantric, because Tantric is also, the subset of Tantric is, sexuality and all that. But Tantric is more than that, right? As you will by now understand that Hinduism is more than gods and, elephant gods and stuff like that. Same way, Kama Sutra was a part of the sexual divination of our community, right? And the intent of it was not to teach people how to have sex. It was to teach people how to go beyond physical pleasures and realize the Supreme, right? So in order to go beyond something, you break the glass ceiling or something, right? You need to have a given state of mind or a given state of affairs, right? I mean, you can become rich only if you have some kind of finance now or some kind of education now, right? Otherwise, you will be daydreaming that one day you'll become rich. It's the same way. You have a foundational thing that, this is the minimum, sexual position, sex that we require. But the intent is to go beyond it. That's what Kama Sutra was all about.
Okay.
It is not a manual of how to have sex. It was a manual to realize God through sexuality and for equal pleasure of woman and man. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we believed thousands of years ago that the only organism that is pleasurable in both the sexes is human. No other animal on this planet, the female form, enjoys sex. It's a painful thing for the female, right? But only in humanity, both the genders have this pleasure kind of appeal. So beyond that, so pleasure becomes addictive, right? I mean, we know dopamine and all the the enzymal secretions that happen on any pleasurable experience, including sex, right? Mm-hmm. The idea was to go beyond reveling in that pleasure to understand the meaning of why that union is happening. What is the divination behind a man and woman coming together to provide a progeny? What's in it for mankind? What's in it for the supreme form to make these things happen? Right? That was the basis of Kama Sutra.
Okay. I have so the I'm not. I guess I don't quite understand enough to know when we've left traditional Hinduism and gone into the more mystical, or if there even is such a thing. Are they sort of one and the same?
They are one and the same. They all coexist. This is what I keep telling people. There is no difference between science and spirituality insofar as Hinduism is concerned.
Okay.
There is a very, very demarcated line between science and spirituality in the West, and there is history for it. I understand it, right? But we believe that all of these coexist, and one cannot live without the other.
Well, I'm actually relieved. There's Judaism and there's Kabbalah, which is considered sort of the mystical, and I know that there's others that escape me now. I think in Islam it's Sufism is one of the more mystical sects, which I need to move on to Islam at some point soon. I've tried, just without success. In any event, I'm almost relieved because I've had you on for over an hour and a half, and if we didn't touch the mystical, I'd be in trouble. But we did, even though I didn't exactly know it.
Yeah, I think all of the responses, they have a mystical element. We went through metaphysics. We went through the realization of supreme through sexuality, which is also mystical. We went through a lot of these stars and constellations, which is also mystical. Temple construction, mystical again. So I think we've touched upon it.
Excellent.
As a primer or a primer.
That's all it's supposed to be. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you making time for me on a Saturday. We started around 9:20 a.m. my time, which I think is 9:20 p.m. your time?
No, in fact, it's around 8:30 now here. So I think some of the daylight savings has kind of mixed up the time zones.
It has, because I do podcasts with a guy in Australia a lot, and it used to be a 14-hour time difference. Now it's a 16-hour time difference, or I'm doing the time difference in the wrong direction.
So right now the time here is 9:30 p.m. right now.
Okay, so it's 11 and a half hour, 10 and a half hour difference, something. Okay, I should have. the world. So much I'm trying to understand, and I can't figure out time differences. So maybe that's the true Garden of Doom. It's my limitations. So, all right, Ajit, if people want to find you or support you, I know that you're a musician as well, so tell them where they can find you and find your music and find anything else that you are interested in promoting.
Sure, they can find me on worldwideweb.com. That's wide spelled VOID. And they can also find me on LinkedIn. I go by the name of Ajit Padmanabh. You can copy the spelling that Jeff would be so kind enough to put it on the description bar, and connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's where my startup works will be exposed to you, which has to do with a lot of heritage and history of India, where, you know, we deal with these kind of principal elements also. So yeah, LinkedIn, worldwideweb.com. These are the two places to connect with me.
Have I connected with you on LinkedIn yet?
Yes.
Okay, good. I thought I did. I just want to make sure.
And I tagged you also in one of the posts, so maybe you could just relook at them.
Yeah, I definitely will. And you also have music. You're a musician, which in the last show, one of your songs was the outro. I'll probably do the same thing here as well. Awesome. Is that also found on LinkedIn? They can find your music there?
They can find it on worldwideweb.com.
Perfect.
Worldwideweb.com. Yeah, that's the website.
Okay.
And I'm on Apple and Spotify and all with that name, World Wide Web. They can find my albums there.
Excellent. Well, the correct spelling of your name will be in the show notes, as they were in the show notes for the original show, or the first show, the Vedic show. I can't thank you enough. I wish you the best, and I'm sure we'll talk again. And our mutual friend, Reverend Willis, says hello. I spoke to him just a couple weeks ago, so and he's doing great also. He's got a couple of books coming out in the new year. So so all is good around here. And again, thank you very much, folks. Thank you for tuning in, and you'll hear from us again next week in the Garden of Doom.